one of the ways we've structured the strategy club to be useful to you is basically all right. I'm going to start today's session by walking you through a certain little book I have here. Why Nations Fail. One of the thoughts that come to me when I look at books like this and other books that try to address or solve the biggest problems of our planet is, why are these problems not yet solved, right? Why are these problems not yet solved? If somebody knows exactly why nations fail, why are nations still failing? I have another book there called From Third World to First World, which is basically the story of Singapore. The story of Singapore. And in this story, Lee Kuan Yew detailed his journey somewhere between the 50s and 60s, or how he moved this nation, 50s, 60s, 70s, from what it was at that time at par with many colonized African nations to what he made it become. Now, the question is, African leaders are reading these texts, so to speak. They know about these stories, these success stories, but they remain where they are. So if we knew about the origins of power, prosperity, poverty, and all that, why are we not using this knowledge to change our lot? There could be many reasons we attribute to this, but I don't even want to go too deep into that, because the trajectory of my conversation is slightly nuanced. Now, I want you to think about your school. If you've been to the university and maybe you did a course like economics or engineering or accounting or any other course that speaks to something people use in the industry, you'll discover the distance between the economics professor and someone who has actually used the principles of economics to make a change in their society. Your financial expert, your economics professor is teaching you about financial markets, probably. He's teaching you why nations fail, demand and supply, but he's not necessarily the richest person in the room, right? So he's different from that. Now, you paid him, maybe, depending on where you school, maybe $5,000, maybe $20,000, maybe $30,000 to teach you economics, but you're probably, depending on where you end up working, maybe you end up richer than he is, depending on where you are. So the point there is that it's like what we know is not necessarily the same as what we're able to accomplish. The fact that we know something, the fact that we know how something works, does not mean we are able to make it work. It doesn't mean we're able to reproduce it. The fact that we can be inspired by an Elon Musk, inspired by a Bill Gates, inspired by a Donald Trump, if you like, inspired by all these people, does not mean that we are going to be able to reproduce what they did in their lives. So it's something that we want to meditate on. We want to think about it basically and ask ourselves, what makes things work? What makes things work the way they work? And why should we believe that reading a book like Why Nations Fail will make a difference to our nations? Or that going to school for 5 years to learn economics will make any difference to our lives? So it's all a question of, is it, how applicable is the knowledge we're embracing? And should it be that the person who teaches us what he is doing is able to do it better than we do it? Now, I want to draw your attention to another, field of this thought. The fact that many times the person who is accomplishing something awesome may not necessarily be able to communicate to you how they did it. So that's why there are ways in which we communicate knowledge, not necessarily by teaching directly. Sometimes you have to watch that person closely. You have to watch them in order to observe something they can't tell you, straight up in a class. So you find out that, I am taking a course in strategy, and I was listening to, I think his name is Michael Abiu or so. And he was detailing how he has started 5 companies serially, and all of them started making profits within the first year. Now, that is not common. And I had a question for him, even though I did not have the opportunity to ask that question. The question was, is this the kind of thing we can reproduce? Is it the kind of thing we can reproduce? Can we teach somebody to do what he did? Is it the kind of thing we can teach in a class and say, this is how to start companies back to back and not fail? Or is it an exclusive preserve of some very special people who are able to navigate the world of business with skill? So that's a question that we need to ponder over. Not everything can be taught. But be that as it may be, I want you to look at another trend of thought, because you may be saying, yes, you're right. Somebody says he's a coach, he's a finance coach, he's not rich. Somebody says he's a fitness coach, he's not fit. And I want you to look at something. I want you to look at something very closely.
Besides being 2 football stars who currently play for Al Nassr and Inter Miami, Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi are 2 tycoons who know how to make the most of their great fortunes. But have you ever wondered which of them has the most luxurious life? In this video, you'll see a heated battle between Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi. So, let's fight! After hanging up his boots, Pep Guardiola dedicated himself to his coaching career. The first club he managed was Barcelona B, before taking charge of the first team in 2008, with which he won the Continental Treble twice, the Copa del Rey, and more. And to give you an idea of his achievements as Barcelona manager, he won a total of 14 titles in a 4-year spell in charge of the club. Another team Guardiola coached was Bayern Munich, where he was successful in important competitions such as the Bundesliga, not forgetting Manchester City, the team he still manages today, and with whom he won a triple crown again in 2019, making him the only coach to achieve this feat twice in his career. And thanks to his successful career as a player and coach, Pep Guardiola has amassed a large fortune and is now able to enjoy a quiet and luxurious life.
So, as a very simple, comparison, Pep Guardiola is said to be worth about 35 million pounds, probably maybe $40 million. And Messi is said to be worth about $650 million. Now, that is the wide gap. It's like more than 10 times the worth of a coach. The footballer is more than 10 times. So if we are measuring only money, that is a huge gap. Well, what's the point here? The point here is that the coach has his role and the footballer has his role. And if you're going to compare them, you may not be doing a very just comparison. The lecturer has his role and the student has his role, right? The consultant has his role and the CEO has his role. And now that I mentioned the word consultant, in my career, I always have questioned, why do CEOs hire consultants? Don't they know what to do? Don't they want to develop their staff internally? Don't they want to make sure that people who they are following them within the organization are growing in their capacity? The point here is that, of course, obviously, the CEO wants to get results quickly. But I want you to also notice the dichotomy of roles there, the spread, the breadth of roles. The employee, the internal employee has their role. The consultant has their role. The CEO as a leader or the CIO or the C-suite executive has their role within the organization. So the point here is not always who is worth more. It's not always whether the person who is a consultant has ever started a company. Why should he or she be advising a CEO? The point is they have honed certain skills that allows them to pierce through, so to speak, what the CEO is doing with their knowledge, with their expertise, with their breadth of experience, with their ability to touch different organizations, and they're able to give guidance that is then evaluated by the business leader. So they have roles. They have different roles they play. So Einstein never performed any experiments, but he's one of the most famous scientists of the 20th century. He is famous for postulating the theory of relativity, and he's famous for the equation E equals to mc squared. And he basically toppled some of Isaac Newton's theories, who was born 200 and something years before he was, about 230 years. So people had believed something for 230 years until Einstein came along. Yet Einstein did not perform any experiment. He only theorized. His role was developing theories. And someone could challenge us and say, how can you, who didn't, in quote, do anything, how can he be so important? Because he has a gift and a role he played in the world of science. Now let's learn a bit about Einstein.
This man said that imagination is more important than knowledge. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we'll be learning more about the life and accomplishments of Albert Einstein. Born March 14th, 1879 in Germany, Albert Einstein's early scientific interest can be traced to a simple compass he was shown at the age of 5, which prompted him to wonder what controlled its movement. By age 10, he was given important readings in mathematics, science, and philosophy to nurture his talents. While at school, Einstein excelled in certain subjects, though his boredom made him appear lazy to many of his teachers. Upon graduating at the turn of the 20th century, Einstein unsuccessfully sought a teaching job. Instead, he eventually secured employment at a Swiss patent office, which allowed him enough spare time to continue his scientific research and studies. His work there centered on electromagnetic devices, and this greatly influenced his later ideas and theories. 1905 was a huge year in Einstein's career, and it has since been labeled his Annus Mirabilis, or Miracle Year. It was the year the scientific community took notice. He was awarded his PhD by the University of Zurich and published 4 landmark papers during that period. These papers went on to build the foundation of physics and alter the accepted perceptions of space, time, and matter. This was also when he introduced the most famous equation of the 20th century, E equals mc squared, in reference to the relationship between the mass and energy of a certain object. Within 3 years, Einstein's reputation as a foremost scientist helped him become a university lecturer. Soon after, he quit that and his job as a patent clerk to rise through the ranks and become a full professor, which he achieved in 1911. He continued within the world of academia, and in 1919, he became world famous when a theory he had put forth years earlier was effectively proven true.
So notice the path of Einstein. He wasn't an exceptional student. He was an exceptional mind, but not an exceptional student in the eyes of his lecturers, because everything that was going on was, in quote, boring to him. You could even say maybe it was beneath him intellectually. He didn't get a job as a lecturer immediately or initially, and he got a job at the patent office and began to explore his experiments. He didn't get recognized until his theories were proven to be true. Theories that toppled the thoughts of Isaac Newton 230-something years after Newton was born. So this is insightful because Einstein wasn't the typical lecturer, the typical scientist, the typical scientist who does a lot of experiments, discovers things by testing. He didn't discover things by testing. He discovered things by thinking. And it's very important to understand the distinction between such roles. There are such roles in the world. He didn't have to be a Newton to become impressive in the world of science. The same thing with your lecturer who taught you economics. He didn't have to be rich, or he doesn't have to be rich for him to make an impression on you as a student. So it's very important. So the bottom line here is there are different roles in the world that we live in. And I started by talking about the fact that we write books like this because we think we know something. We make an assumption. It's almost like the assumption you make when you theorize that I'm going to put out a product in the market and X amount of people are going to buy. The same way we have theories. And one theory from Newton is overturned by another theory from Einstein as time advances. One theory by the writer of this book is Acemoglu and Robinson. And they postulate theories and they write this book is about like a 500-page book saying this is why nations fail. Then you ask yourself, if they know so much about why nations fail, why haven't they helped nations succeed over the last few decades since this book was written? So we talked about the fact that yes, this knowledge is there. It's not, we don't discount the reality of the knowledge. We want to just postulate the fact that it's not applicable in all scenarios. Not all knowledge is applicable in all scenarios. So we must make the distinction. The second thing is that if you are arguing that somebody who knows something has to be able to do it, it's not always the case, because not all persons who know how to do something are able to actually execute. And that brings up the subject of roles. Some people's role is to coach, like Pep would coach a Messi, and a Messi would become 10 times his net worth. But Messi may not have reached that potential without a coach. So the coach helps him reach his potential Because while he's a good player, great talent, and he's obviously more popular than Pep himself was when he was a footballer. Yet he needed a Pep, he needed a coach like Pep to help him reach his full potential. What we do at the Strategy Club is coaching. It does not mean we have become excellent entrepreneurs and therefore we know what to do, how to do whatever we need to do. It simply means we have a certain gift, a certain community, a certain kind of experience that we have ported to the world of business that helps those with talent like you to embrace their own role in the ecosystem and allow us to play our role in their life in order for you to become the maximum, you to reach your highest potential as an entrepreneur. So here, you don't have to ask, why is my economics professor not rich? Why is the coach 10 times less, financially buoyant than his football prodigy? Why is the person who has written this book not able to change all the nations of the world? Those questions, we don't have all the answers of them. But the point we've made is, number one, I know something doesn't mean I can do it. It may take someone else to do it. And it may take me to help that person to do it. Number two, we have a divergence of roles in the world. And sometimes we have to embrace our roles. The role of a coach versus the role of a footballer. The role of someone who investigates these ideas and puts them together in a book. And the role of a politician who has to mine from these ideas what belongs to them in terms of in their own context, and then use what is for them. So play your role and allow someone to play a role in your life. One of the ways we've structured the Strategy Club to be very useful to you is basically to say, let's be your external board. You have the talent, you have the capacity to do so much. We want to help you. We want to be that external eye that looks at what you're doing and asks questions about it. It helps you think deeper into the execution of your venture so that you can reach your highest potential.